Great opportunity to talk about trading headlines or breaking news, and more specifically, guys, understanding what risks come along with that. We had a market event happen this afternoon, so let's take a second and give some pretty good tips on how we can maybe control risk better around breaking news and headline risk.
It's almost as if we timed this one perfectly. So we had the Fed meeting minutes come out today, so I'm going to be able to show you what was happening in the queues. Now, obviously, for this type of an event, it's not necessarily a headline or just a bullet point like an economic number. You're going to be digesting some data and digesting the text. But there are some things that you can glean from the price action. The first thing is establish the range. What was the range going into it? Because there's a good chance you can test it. You had the Qs with a 350 bottom here, and then in the all afternoon, you had a top at about 353. So you had a $3 range going into this move. Yes, you had an initial breakout to the upside. It tried to get past 353, but immediately snapped back. What you then put in is, okay, so it broke the high barely and then tries to come back in here. This is very, very common on big headlines, especially around the Fed, but it then held support. From that point, I think it can tell you once you find the support at the previous low that it's overall strength. It did not run the stops at the low of the day the same way it ran stops at that resistance level at 353, puts in a higher low as well, and then starts to break out. If you're trying to trade within that range, it's very tricky to actually have a stop there. You've got to give it some room, but the sign of strength in this particular case was running stops through the highs, and when it tried to do the same thing back, it had a wick bottom, did not take out that low, and then starts to go. You don't always have to trade right when the headline comes out. You can allow it to make a bit of a range, make a decision, whether you're here going long on a bit of a dip and a consolidation, or maybe you're just waiting for the top to be taken again now that you've formed a bit of a bias. That's the first thing you can do. The other thing I'll always caution is if you're in trades going into that, understand this whippy action can happen. So you might want to consider, do I need to be getting flat? Do I need to be having a tighter stop going into it? And do not leave orders out into the market at faraway prices in front of a major event. Unless it's part of your trading plan, it's a good way to court disaster.
And double check all your stop orders as well, like I do right now. But what about this? I'm going to have oil up here. And I mean, my tip is how to prepare for major headlines is just know what you're trading and know what you're looking at. And it's just as easy as that. So I'm going to talk about oil ripped up here. We touched $96 on Russia news. You know, looks like that was when Putin was like, hey, man, you know, we're not going to pull back from them. There was like so when they were set up that big, huge desk. And then all of a sudden it came out and was like, oh, maybe, you know, things have eased here. We had Joe Biden come out and talk. We had some of the diplomats come out and talk about Russia and Ukraine, things like that. So, whoops. There we go. Back in right now. So we'll see about this, making these news for the bottom and then right back up. And then today, less fears about Russia again. So my tip is really just as simple as can possibly be. And that is understand what you're trading and then just go over to that. If you're waiting for Russia headlines, why? Don't even go to equity markets, man. Oil's trading 24 hours. You can go over there, hit up the NYMEX or electronically traded and trade something that's sensitive to oil. So know what your headline is. That's my tip.
I love the headlines. I love the news. So I had to jump in there a little early. No, great tips, guys. We have to understand exactly what is happening before it happens. Obviously, you're not going to know the news when it does come out, but have an understanding of where we can go overall. That's a little bit, guys, a few tips on how to control your risk during a headline.